It was a group of 15 individuals who were really looking to create a language on Islam in the environment. We saw in our text in the Quran and Hadith that there's so much about protecting the earth and seeing nature as a sign for us to reflect upon, but we weren't really seeing that in our communities. And we were seeing a real disconnect, and so we wanted to create a language for people to learn about what Islam says about environmentalism. I would say it's even more recent for us as Muslim Americans, really creating an identity for ourselves in this country. I think this is one of the issues that's going to rise up, and we're going to create a language around it. I mean, it's an issue that isn't a priority for a lot of the communities that we see. Mosque leadership, they're just now starting to talk about it. You see it more and more on university campuses, but it's a recent phenomenon. There's just so much within our own faith that we have to understand about what it means to protect the earth. There's so much scripture that says if you look to the bee or the honey as a sign to reflect upon God's bounty. And there's also conversation within the Quran about nature being in constant remembrance of God and being in dhikr, which means remembrance of God. And to think that you wouldn't stop someone who's in prayer. So for us to have a sort of a relationship with nature where we're preventing it from flourishing it just seems like it's like we're imposing a future that was not destined by God for nature.
Did the Prophet Muhammad talk about the
Yes,
environment?
absolutely. He was best example for us on stewardship. There's a story of him in the Hadith that talks about how he would give share sermons on a tree stump, and he was later built this pulpit by his companions farther away, and the tree stump would wail. And then he went and actually hugged the tree and tried to understand why it was wailing, and he later expressed that it was because the tree was no longer near him. And I mean, he was literally a tree hugger. So, and there's countless other hadiths of him being really kind to animals, even in times of battle, being a conservationist, turning off the lights when others hadn't. So there's a lot there. It's a very rich tradition. There's much to be said about people who are poor being disproportionately affected by environmental degradation. And so I think everything is very much connected, and we can't see this stuff in silos. But I think within Islam, I don't think most scholars would disagree that in protecting the earth is important. They do agree that. It's not a top priority with all the other challenges. I see protecting the earth as protecting people. It's very much connected. It's about walking lightly in the world and having an understanding that our time here is short, and we need to do our best to leave these signs that are in nature for future generations to also experience God's bounty. For us, the focus has been on education, and so we've done a lot of speaking engagements. We've worked with MSAs, Muslim Student Associations nationally, as well as getting our hands dirty. We partnered with a local farm here. Every month we would go and help on their urban farm. It's connected to a school. We've done park cleanups. We've created toolkits so people could download a toolkit that would be, for the month of Ramadan, what they could focus on every day to reduce their consumption or to be more reflective about nature. They could do a leftover iftar, which is the meal that you open a fast with. So you instead of, eating with a vengeance, as one of a scholar speaks about, after fasting, having more of a consciousness of the fact that you fasted all day, and you want to lower your consumption by eating your leftovers rather than throwing away a bunch of food. I started doing this work because I noticed within myself the desire to understand what was going around me. And I'm an urban planner by training, so I know that there's an intentionality behind the way sidewalks are built, the way trees are next to next to a bench or things like that. There's an architecture, there's an intention behind it. And so that really got me thinking about the fact that we need to open ourselves up to what's around us because there's an intentionality behind it. And right in that example, I'm talking about city planners, engineers, architects, but then there's God, who's the architect of the entire world, and there's an intentionality behind every leaf that we see, and if we don't recognize that it's there in front of us as a sign of His bounty, of His mercy on us, then we're really doing ourselves a disservice. And so I feel like it's my mission to share that, to talk about how we should open ourselves up. And I believe that if we open ourselves up to what's around us, then we'll have a greater desire to actually do something about it. I started this work because of the planning connection. I have degrees in it, but I've stayed with it because I've learned so much more about my faith through it. I mean, it is, when I pray, I feel the most connected when my prayers are outside, or when I'm thinking about something, a natural setting, things like that. I feel God's presence in those moments. I mean, He's everywhere all the time, and different parts of the faith speak to different people,
Sure.
but that speaks to me.